Yo, what's good, everybody, man? Look, we doing a real special Black lunch break here, live on Black with No Chaser. I got my usual suspect in the building and co-host, Seeking Noxola in the building, man. But also joining us today, we got a very special guest. Look, he's the co-founder. He's the actual chief architect and head for diversity, inclusion, belonging. We got the brother Prakash Janaki Rama in the building from NextDoor, everybody. So welcome this brother to the stage, man. Thank you so much for being on with us.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated.
No problem. So first things first, because when I type in your name in social media, the first thing that popped out was hip hop, but not just hip hop, old school hip hop. Now, for the people out there that don't know, there's a difference between hip hop and old school hip hop. So I want to know, what's your top 5 old school hip hop artists?
All right, we going to the old school hip hop. I like that. We're starting off with the good stuff. So my number one of all time, and this is just probably a product of when I grew up. So I'm a child of the 70s and 80s going into the 90s. So the golden era of hip hop was really where that's my pocket. That's where I sit. And I loved Rakim. So Rakim is my number one. I just thought he was incredible. The young Nas, like first couple albums of Nas, I still love Nas today. Yeah, but like, you know, people forget Nas was like 18, 19 when he first came on. So so I love Nas. I used to love EPMD. So I really used to love EPMD. I used to get down to EPMD. I love Big Daddy Kane. So, you know, like you don't often hear a lot of dudes say that they like Big Daddy Kane, right? Because Big Daddy Kane kind of appealed to the ladies, but I thought Big Daddy Kane had slick flow. And then to me, one of the most underrated rappers of all time from that generation is LL Cool J. So I remember back in the day, LL Cool J, like I don't think we give LL his flowers enough. So I'm gonna put LL up on that. So that's my 5.
I really, you know what though, I'm glad you bring up LL, man, because I always feel like, you know, for whatever reason, because back in the day, you know what I'm saying, when I first got introduced to LL, you know, I'm gonna knock you out, mama say knock you out type deal. I didn't even know it was LL Cool J for a while. I think I was like 4 or 5 years old, like 5 years old. That was
wow.
That was like one of my first, like, not that I could think about, rap songs in my head. I think LL Cool J was the first real rap artist that stuck with me, and it was that song. And I would run around the crib all day telling my sisters, "I'm gonna knock you out."
Well, we go even further back, man. With like, I'm bad, and I'll crush you like a jelly bean. My hat is like a shark's fin. Like that's what I'm talking about. That like LL came out hard back then, you know. And then he kind of softened up a little bit later, and now he's on TV and, you know, doing all kind of stuff now. But early LL, man, he was bad.
He was raw. It was different. He definitely like, and you know, I think that sometimes people that maybe that grew up with LL, we always don't like to see our entertainers evolve. You know, it's like people get mad. Like they be like, oh man, like I can't believe like this doesn't sound like you anymore. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm not 20. Like I'm actually 40.
Yeah, he's 50. Yeah,
I'm rapping about things that are relevant to my life now. I probably
asking my age.
Yeah, I mean, Ice Cube's not going to be Ice Cube from back in the day forever, right? So,
yeah, I wouldn't even want Ice Cube to be NWA. You know? I think Ice Cube.
That's too much. It's too much.
So funny, man. So you're a sneakerhead too. What's the last pair of sneakers you just copped?
The last pair of sneakers I copped. Let me think about this. I think it was the John Elliott pink LeBrons, and they're well. So look, they're nice. Not everybody likes them because they're a little,
that
you know,
look.
Yeah, is that look? But I like them, and that's all that matters to me. So I rock those John Elliott LeBrons.
I feel like I'm like a former sneakerhead. I like, you know, I used to have like 400 pair at one point, and I like
400.
Bro,
yeah.
But they had their own room, huh?
Well, New Orleans, you know, coming from New Orleans is a big sneakerhead, like, you know, like city. It's crazy with sneakers, like, oh, you know what I mean? From J's on down to high-end fashion, whatever it is. Like, everybody's wearing it, right? And I remember when I had to give away like 200 pair. And then I had to give away my LeBrons. And, you know, I'm just saying this story because, you know, LeBron's, I'm a fan of LeBron, but I've never been a fan of the actual basketball shoe. It was never really a good basketball shoe.
Nah, it's not a good basketball shoe.
Basketball shoe. I mean, that's just my take on LeBron. Cool looking shoe, just not a basketball shoe. Like KD's,
I would say even back in the day, the original Jordans, like the Jordan 1s, I cannot believe that man played an 82 game season in those, because I wear those and hoop and like
that flat ass bottom. Yo,
oh God, no shot. Like, I'm like this dude wore a new pair of Jordan 1s every game, a new pair. He didn't even break them in. I'm like, come on, man, that's not gonna work.
Nah, yo, imagine my goofy ass back in the day, and see, you probably had a pair too. Like trying not to walk, so you to the front of
you don't crease him.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yo, God forbid you got the bent up J's or like G Nikes or Air Force Ones, whatever y'all call them. But yeah,
see, that's where I'm not a real sneakerhead, because I wear the shoes to wear them, because I know they're running game on us, right? Like the Jordan 1s are gonna come out in every color that they can imagine, and we're gonna keep buying them. So I'm like, there's gonna be a new pair that come out at some point, and I'll just get a new pair at some point. So
they say,
I keep wearing them.
Allegedly. Sometimes they don't come back.
Allegedly, yeah, true.
Then you be disgusted because you wore your dead stocks. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, but that's cool stuff, man. I think that like I would say on the rap game, I got one last question on the rap game. Okay. We're gonna bring it like to like more present day. And I wasn't gonna ask this, but since we here, I was gonna ask this. So there's 4 rappers. I feel like we're up there. You mentioned like Nas, and we didn't mention Lil Wayne, but there's these 4 rappers, but one of them have to go. One of them has to go, right? So we got Jay-Z, we got Lil Wayne, we got Drake, and then we got like Nas, but one of them has to go.
Okay, that one's easy for me. I would pop Drake off of that list.
You would pop Drake off the list?
Yo,
I would pop Drake off of that list.
Yeah.
And it's not because I don't like Drake music, right? I'm not one of those old heads that just hates on all the new kids. I'm 45. I'm 45 years old, but I can still appreciate a good bop and like listen to stuff in the car. But I think when it comes down to just the creativity, the lyrics, the complexity, and just all of that stuff, I think the other 3 are just on a different level. So
work. All right. I can appreciate that. Drake,
where would you go with that? Where would you pop off that list?
I'm taking Drake out, so where I'm thinking.
Okay.
Honestly, this maybe not be a fan favorite, but I would take off Jay-Z off the list. I'm actually more of a Nas fan than a Jay-Z fan, but
okay.
I know that's
gosh, like what American Gangster?
Wow.
Like what?
They're gonna get you in the comments, man. They're gonna get you in the comments.
It's a lose thing, right? This is why this 4 thing
That's true.
Is the best, because it's like why, right? But I feel like let me just say this though about this, right? It's the way in which I also felt about Tupac when I was younger. I think Jay-Z and Pac and everybody that came out in a certain time, like before I really came, like, and then when I was coming out, of course, Wayne was big, you know what I'm saying, coming from New Orleans. And so, I latched on more of that kind of era rap. And then I still was a fan of Jay-Z, but I think that in terms of just like you and how where you came up and what you like kind of drawn to, if I had to choose, like if you had Biggie up there, I would have took Biggie off, right? And then maybe even left Jay-Z. But I just like I wasn't really, you know what I'm saying?
You're crushing me. I'm over.
Yo. To me. All right, whatever.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Now that I think about it, I want to take EPMD off of my list and put Tribe Called Quest in there, because I remember like when I was in high school, I was listening to Tribe heavy. So like I got to put Tribe back in there. So
I think that's a good replacement.
That's a good sub. That's a good sub.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into this conversation, the question that we ask every guest before they step on the platform: what comes to mind when you hear the words "Black with No Chaser"?
To me, it's about authentic. It's about an authentic space to talk about a lived experience and to create community and to create more, cultural awareness. But I think also just reclaiming the culture. I think this is a really, really important platform for that. And I love how y'all, like, I wasn't expecting to come in here and talk about sneakers and talk about like my hip hop selection, but I love that, because now I'm charged, right? I'm like, you know what? I feel a sense of belonging. I feel a sense of place and purpose. And I love that. I love when you can travel into authentic spaces, have these kinds of conversations, have a setting where you can be 100% real and talk your talk, but but also address real issues. And I think it's just such a beautiful blend. And so a lot of respect to both of you for what you've created here and your team. This is just a great, authentic, wonderful cultural space. So respect.
Thank you.
We appreciate that, man. You know, it's hard. I mean, again, you know, man, you've been building communities as well with NextDoor, and you know, we want to make sure we dig in NextDoor a little bit. And so,
sure.
You know, I knew about NextDoor. I'll be perfectly honest, but I wasn't really like, you know, well versed at NextDoor. But then when I started digging a bit more, I'm like, oh shit, like NextDoor has been around for a little bit, kind of doing some things, building community. Sometimes, not always, the community which they always want to build, but nevertheless, still right, building community. So for folks out there though who have never heard of NextDoor though, I think it's really good to kind of like at least start with the foundation of really who is NextDoor, what is it all about, when did it start, and really how can you find NextDoor? Yeah,
well, so NextDoor, it's a complicated story, right? So we're not that lightning in a bottle, like went from 0 to 1 billion users overnight. This has been a long build. And so my co-founders and I started this company back in 2010, in the summer of 2010. And the inspiration was really just think back to where you were in 2010. The landscape of these apps and these different opportunities online was very different. You could connect with friends and family all over the world. You could connect with your professional networks and even with people with whom you shared interests. But we recognized that we didn't even know the people across the street or on the other side of the wall from us, despite all these technological advances. And it turns out that the data actually supports that. So that summer, there was a Pew Research Institute study that said 29% of Americans knew only some of their neighbors, which implies a few, and 28% of Americans, this blew my mind, don't know a single neighbor by name. And we all thought back to our own childhoods of, I used to play ball in the streets and hang out at other people's houses. And if I was acting up at somebody else's house, I might catch a whooping from someone else's mom. And I know that's not as popular these days, the corporal punishment thing, but like when I was coming up, that's how it was. And so, we were all raised by a tribe of people. And to think that nearly 60% of the population just didn't have that connectivity into their communities blew my mind. And so we started to do a lot of research. And the research showed that in communities where you have a higher degree of social capital, where you know your neighbors, you can rely on them for help and favors, and that's a reciprocal relationship, unsurprisingly, outcomes across the board get better. Crime rates drop, property values increase, education and test outcomes get better, and people, in fact, live longer in communities in which they have the support of their neighbors. So we decided we were going to go build an app, and what we've built is an app that from the ground up is about the neighborhood. It's a place that you go to plug into the neighborhoods that matter to you. And so every day, millions of people come to our app. They exchange recommendations for local businesses, service providers like plumbers, babysitters, handyman. They can buy and sell things from their neighbors. If you got a used couch or a used bike at home and you're trying to get rid of it, NextDoor is a great place to do that. You can tap into whatever's happening in the local community in terms of events. And if you have a lost pet or a lost child, how else are you going to connect? Are you going to go put signs up on every telephone post? No, you can get this out to every neighbor. And so we think of ourselves as being a place where proximity trumps preference. Just in the same way that you don't get to choose who your neighbors are in the community in which you live, when you come to NextDoor, you don't have to build a following. You don't need to go friend people or try and build a following. Your neighbors are right there. And whether or not you choose to have backyard cookouts with them or hang out with them, they're an incredibly, incredibly useful resource for you because you can scream into the ether anything that you need in your local community, and your neighbors are there to help you. And when you feel supported that way, that supports what we articulate as our purpose and mission, our 100-year vision for the company, which is to cultivate a kinder world where everyone has a neighborhood they can rely on. And just imagine that in a world where you could look around and not think of your neighbors as being strangers, but people with faces and names and other human beings that you can call upon for help, whether it's a flood, a fire, or a hurricane, or you're just trying to carpool with somebody to get your kids to their local soccer game. That's the way our communities need to be. And over the last 90 years, 100 years, we've seen nothing but precipitous decline in that community connectivity as people have become more mobile, they move around more, they become more isolated, and loneliness is an epidemic, and our society is now divided and polarized. And so for us, it all starts with the unit of change, which is the neighborhood. So that's why we built this app. And today we're lucky. We're in 11 countries, over 275,000 neighborhoods around the world are using NextDoor. We've got tens of millions of people that are using this app. And, you know, we feel like we're just at the beginning of our travels.
Hell yeah. And I signed up, and I think I signed up wrong, but I did sign up.
Okay.
No,
Signed up wrong.
What I mean by that is that I think that there was an issue because where I'm at in DC is a relatively new residence within the last 2 years. And so I think on the geo mapping and just kind of like geographical, like I guess like what addresses are really available at the time. So they like placed me in Navy Yard. And so now all these neighbors that are next door to me, somebody reached out to me and was like, hey man, I saw you like new in the block or whatever. And I was like, oh, like, what's up? And so I actually introduced myself to the neighborhood as if I lived there, but I don't. But anyway, but I did see somebody lose a dog. Saw somebody post about they need some help moving their furniture, and then people helped. I thought that like just on first glance and just being in the app within the last couple of days or so, I felt like, you know, everything you said really, really, really does happen inside the app. And so if you really are somebody, and especially if you're new to a neighborhood and you're trying to like kind of figure out how I can get in where I can fit in and you don't know anybody, NextDoor, because I think it's definitely different than Facebook because it puts you literally in the community
your location
that you live, right? And so that's the real, I guess, distinguishing factor for sure. And then you could just plug and play with everybody. They even had a scary moment, I'll say this, where a woman talked about some creepy person was like looking inside her window, and then everybody was like, oh no, girl, don't, you know what I'm saying? Close your window, girl. And it was like getting behind her and like, you let her know. Like, I was like, all right, that was cool. So I feel like, you know, deep down, everything you just said though really does speak to the app in a real way. That's all I just want to make sure.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
But
appreciate that.
with everything that's good, there's definitely the bad side. So let me ask you, what type of measures have you guys taken to combat different type of racist type of comments that are going on? Because I know living in Jackson, Mississippi, when I was on the app, I definitely was easily able to peep whether this was an alarming type of status or was this a racist type of status. So what type of measures is being taken with that, and how do you guys flag issues like that?
Yeah, first off, I think our journey with this has been, you know, since 2015, we became aware of some acute issues initially around issues like racial profiling in communities, right? So people using the app to say, hey, there's a suspicious dark-skinned man walking around the neighborhood, which in and of itself is not a crime, right? It might be a resident of the community, might be someone's young son walking around in the community. So we started to work, number one, you have to acknowledge when these kinds of things are happening on your platform, and you have to welcome people whose lived experience is being affected by that to have seats at the table to discuss solutions. And so number one was acknowledging, hey, listen, there's something happening on here that doesn't roll up to our purpose and mission, and we need to combat it. So the first thing that we've done is we've actually brought people around the table that we think of as experts in the areas of community, civil rights, social justice, criminal justice reform. And we created a coalition, including folks from the community themselves. And we started to work on some solutions in the product. So when you build products like ours at scale, one of the things that you find across the board is that this idea of introducing friction into your product, slowing people down from their task at hand, is not something that companies really want to do, right? They want people in and like using the app as much as possible and getting through flows quickly. What we actually did, and it was based on some research from a woman named Jennifer Eberhardt. She's a professor of psychology over at Stanford University. She's one of the world's leading researchers on bias. She actually trains police forces, and she wrote a great book called Biased that details a lot of the work that we did. But she had the insight that said, hey, listen, when people are doing that, they're in a highly triggered state. They're working out of their reptilian brain, the amygdala and the back, and we need to get them up into their cerebral cortex. We need to slow them down into a place of rational thought. So using that, we actually devised a workflow that introduced friction into the process of reporting such issues and saying, hey, look, you can't just report something on the basis of race and nothing else. You have to have distinguishing characteristics of what behavior is suspicious. You know, what beyond race identifies this person? Like, what makes this actually worthy of like criminal suspicion, right? And through those actions and iteration with the community and with those experiments, we were able to reduce the incidence of racial profiling on the site by 75%. Now, that in and of itself is a really significant achievement. We've seen other platforms try and copy some of this, but it's not enough, right? You have to keep working on these issues. So over time, I think our work has really come into 3 buckets, and we have a lot of focus and resource on this today. Those 3 buckets are around policy, they're around people, and product, and then they're around community, which includes people. So let's start with community, right? Community, again, is creating the representation and the pathways to feedback that represent the lived experiences of people that we want to be using our platform and to feel welcome on our platform. So this overarching work stream is really about making sure that everybody feels welcome at NextDoor, regardless of your walk of life. And so we've done some really important things there. Starting with our internal community of employees in the company, we've added diverse representation to our board of directors, including John Hope Bryant, who's the CEO, chairman, and founder of Operation Hope, one of the largest economic empowerment initiatives for underserved communities in the country. We've added Andrea Wisham, who for 20 years was Oprah's executive vice president, chief storyteller at Harpo Productions. And again, both of them together have different lived experiences. You know, we were talking about Ice Cube earlier. John Hope Bryant grew up in Compton, right? His lived experience is radically different than your average Silicon Valley executive or anybody that serves on a Silicon Valley board. And so there's great representation and accountability at the top. But then we've also created advisory boards that are comprised of experts from civil rights, social justice, criminal justice reform, people like Derek Johnson, who's the CEO and president of the NAACP, also a Tougaloo alumni. We have Tracy Mears. Yeah, don't forget about Tougaloo. He would hate me for forgetting about that. But Tracy Mears, who leads the Justice Collaboratory at Yale, who was part of Barack Obama's 21st Century Task Force about policing. She's on our advisory board. Jennifer Eberhard, who we just discussed, is on our advisory board. And so we have people that we can go to supplement our product development experience, our technical experience internally, with a wider arc and purview of understanding civil rights issues, social justice issues, and kind of what's happening in the world as these issues move around, things like defunding the police and things like Black Lives Matter and all of these issues. And then the last thing on the community front is making sure that we go into communities and speak to people about their experience on the platform. And so we've been doing a lot of research and insights gathering with folks in the Black community. And these are in communities in places like Atlanta, Georgia, Baltimore, Houston, Chicago, New York, all over the country, and trying to amass, an understanding of, are there specific needs that are unserved on our platform? Are there specific conditions that make people feel unsafe or unwelcome? And how do we combat that? So that's the community side. On the product side, it all plays off of policy. So let's start with policy. And policy really starts with our community guidelines. These are the rules by which you agree to abide when you come to NextDoor. And in fact, when you sign up for NextDoor, the very first thing that you need to do is accept our community pledge. If you don't do it, you can't even get into the platform.
That's true.
And that's where it's really, you just did that, right?
No, I did that like 2 days ago.
Yeah. And so you can't use the platform without agreeing that you're going to abide by those rules. And then once you're in the platform, we do a couple of things. Number one, we have learned over time, ours is a community managed service, right? So community members can report content that they think violates our community guidelines, that is discriminatory, hateful, racist, any of those kinds of things. And so we have a lot of data about what has been reported in those categories and what has been taken down. And we can use that now to inform another piece of technology that we developed with the help of Jennifer Eberhard that we call the kindness reminder, and has now been evolved into an anti-racism notification.
That's so, look, yo, I was gonna say that's my favorite part about the app.
Yeah.
It's so intuitive. It literally is like, it's almost like, it's like a conscience on the actual app. It's like, yo, you know that's foul. Like,
yeah, it pops up and interrupts you if what you're about to post on the site resembles things that have been posted in the past. And we just evolved this, and I think we're the first company that I know of to do this, the first online platform that said, yo, you can't say white lives matter on our platform. You just can't, because it's associated with white supremacy. You try and say it, it'll get taken down. And also, you can't say all lives matter or blue lives matter to undermine any of the various calls for movements of Black lives. You can't do it, right? That's in our community guidelines. But now if you try and do it, we'll pop up and interrupt you in your flow and say, hey, by the way, these phrases are considered harmful to communities of color. You may not know why, so click on this link and we'll try and educate you.
I have to echo what TJ is saying when he says, I like that shit. I do too, because I want to understand how you guys even decided that we're going to stick with Black Lives Matter is fine, but all the rest of these things is problematic. That is a step in accountability, because we are definitely not a political group that's trying to politicize anything. We're definitely pushing a message that needs to be understood, because it's more than just the words Black Lives Matter. So that's a huge step in accountability that I definitely want every viewer right now that's watching to understand, that they took a big step in saying we're going to stand on this and we're not going to accept the latter.
Yeah, look, we don't view our responsibility in the world to appease people, right? We have a clear purpose and mission for our company, which is to make sure that we're cultivating a kinder world where everyone has a neighborhood they can rely on. Everyone. And so if people are made to feel uncomfortable on our platform because of the use of these harmful phrases that are clearly derived from the phrase Black Lives Matter only to undermine them, well, we can't support that. We're not going to support that. And similarly, we just rolled out a new policy around hate speech and hate symbols. That's right. So you can't put the hangman's noose, you can't put Q, you can't put a swastika, and you can't even put the Confederate flag up on NextDoor, because we know that these are all symbols of oppression. They're symbols of hate. They make people feel othered and unwelcome in their own communities. And so we have no tolerance for that. And like, yeah, you can come talk to us about the Confederate flag representing heritage. That's not what the Anti-Defamation League thinks. That's not what the Southern Poverty Law Center thinks. And we believe in those experts, as they are the ones on the front lines combating hate. And so we align ourselves to those experts and we say, look, we're against hate. You can designate what is hateful, and we support you in that. And we don't believe in hate on our platform either. And so we will encode that into our community guidelines and into the product.
Yeah, man. Look, we kind of spoke about this, and I really, we only got time has flown by. I'm trying to figure out, should I ask this one, the other question? Because I have questions on questions on questions. But I think for folks out there, especially in particular for like Black communities, and like I know that you all are doing a ton of work to combat issues that are facing Black Lives Matter. And police brutality across the board, right? But from a corporate social responsibility or CSR standpoint, what it is of programs, the kind of things you all have teed up coming in 2021, because I know that in the tragic death of George Floyd, many corporations came out, Black Lives Matter, many press releases, and everybody's kind of pandering and kind of getting up on their high horse and saying we all for Black Lives Matter. Yeah. But yet, still obviously the George Floyd and Police Act has still not been passed by Congress. We're still seeing day by day unarmed Black folks being gunned down by police. And I'm not saying this is NextDoor's problem in of itself. Sure. As being a neighborly community building kind of platform, is there anything that we can be looking for as we move into 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, it's really important for us as a company to understand which issues we wade into and which issues we don't. And obviously our overarching mission is to bring communities together. And so when we see things that are happening in the world, and obviously our platform lives within the cultural zeitgeist, the anxieties and tensions of people in the world will ultimately spill over into our platform. We know that. And so number one, first among our priorities is to make sure that our platform remains a place where you can talk about local issues, even difficult local issues, but you do that in a way that's civil and respectful. Right? Mm-hmm. Because these issues do have local impact, even the national issues. The second is we go out and we partner with organizations, and it's not just in the Black community, it includes in the Asian American community, for example, that's going through a lot of hate and difficult times, particularly in my hometown in San Francisco. There's a lot of bad stuff happening. So we look for organizations that are on the front lines and doing good work, and we give them carriage in their messages on our platform. So we give out a lot of pro bono advertising so that those small organizations, in many cases that have limited budget and resources, and even larger organizations like the NAACP, they can get their message out on our platform to millions and millions of people. So for example, in the AAPI community now, what do you do if you're a bystander and you see something happening? For example, an elderly Asian woman being attacked. What should you do? I would say most of us don't know, but there are organizations that are focused on these kinds of playbooks. And we want to amplify the good work that they're doing by using our platform, which reaches millions and millions of people, to do so. And then the last thing I'll say is that we are always looking for opportunities to partner on specific initiatives where our platform can be used to organize, right? And I think that's one of the most powerful aspects of our platform. It's hyper local, so it's right in your community where you are. You don't need to know everybody to participate. You don't even need to know a single person to get value out of the platform.
That's right.
You can come on and say, hey, guess what? You know, we're going to do a march today, or we're going to do a food drive, or we're going to do, you know, we're going to read to kids today, whatever it may be. And you can organize people on the platform really, really effectively. And that's something that we're working on with a lot of our partners, including organizations like the NAACP, African American Mayors Association, Nobel, which is the national organization of Black elected legislative women, that's right? And the other Nobel, which is in law enforcement as well. So, you know, we're trying to partner with everybody that we think is doing good work towards providing a safe space for our communities to thrive. We want to amplify their work. We want to help them use our platform as a platform for organizing and getting the word out. And I think that's where we can add the most value. It's not about who we cut a check to, right? We have a platform that reaches millions and millions and millions of people. You know, we'll cut checks too, but like where we think the real leverage comes from is amplifying the work that these good organizations are doing. That's where we're going to stay focused.
Appreciate that, man. And I know that, look, we about time right here, and I just want to get this in. For folks that are watching, there was an interview about NextDoor, and we try to talk more about anti-racism, but I think everything we talked about today in a nutshell is alluding to combating or anti-racism energy, right? It's look, you know, every organization when it starts, it's not going to be perfect. Whether it's internal issues, whether external issues, whether a combination of the two. You know, when we come from different backgrounds, we set up organizations based on what we know, what the data we have, the lived experiences we have at that particular moment. What I heard from this interview and Prakash is that in NextDoor is that, look, there were some lived experiences that they moved on. There were also some things that happened back in 2015 they became privy to, and then they acted accordingly, right? Then that's a far cry from, you know, certain institutions in this country as we know it to be to this day, man. So I applaud y'all and really living out loud and, like, you know, kind of learning in public, as some folk would say, because it's hard to do. It's hard to have a platform like that and really be attacked from, like, because you can have one bad moment, and that bad moment could potentially sink your entire organization. But the fact that y'all say, you know what, we're gonna keep waking up, we're gonna try hard at this because we want to get it right. And I feel at the core, man, especially with you at the helm and the other folks who founded NextDoor, y'all are doing it right. And I'm looking forward to what's next.
Well, I really appreciate, number one, opening up this space for us to talk about it. Our work on this is never done. We haven't got it right yet. We have way more work to do. But I think as we continue to talk about these issues in plain sunlight, where they often say sunlight is the best disinfectant, we welcome feedback. We want to hear from people who are having bad experiences on the platform, but we also want to amplify those good things that are happening on the platform too, and get as many people on the platform so that they have the support of their neighbors and can live out our purpose and mission, because we think that that's where the unit of change really happens. So thank you so much for opening up this space to me. I really appreciate it and don't take for granted the opportunity to talk about this with your listeners. And I'm looking forward to doing this again someday too.
Oh, we're looking forward to it too, because we definitely want to continue this conversation, as CJ just said in the comments, because it's important. And as you said, the work is never done. But since we have started this conversation, we want to make sure that we continue to amplify every upgrade that you guys make on NextDoor, because we know it isn't easy to continue to keep up with the rush and bush of everything. And we definitely applaud you guys for making sure that you are putting in those measures to make sure that this shit ain't gonna fly over here at NextDoor. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, man, look, if y'all are just tuning in, look, we have the co-founder, the chief architect, head for diversity, inclusion, and belonging at NextDoor, man, Prakash Janaki Raman. Thank you, brother, so much, man, for joining us today on the Black Lunch Break. You know, on the one and only Black with No Chaser, man. So thank you so much, brother. Appreciate you.
All right, y'all. Appreciate you too.
Till next time.